You think the ceiling fan calmed your baby. It didn't. Not exactly. Your baby has been crying, kicking, fighting the air, and then their eyes catch those dark blades turning overhead. And soon, everything changes. The body goes still. The hands loosen. The gaze lifts and locks. For a long stretch, they do not fuss. Do not squirm. Do not look away. It feels strange, maybe even a little eerie. The obvious explanation comes fast. Babies just like random moving things. That sounds reasonable. It is also too small, because when a very young baby goes silent under a ceiling fan, you are probably not watching a quirky little obsession. You may be watching one of the first moments a developing brain finds a pattern simple enough to hold. That is not random. What makes this moment hit so hard is that it does not just look odd. It can feel personal. You spend 10 minutes rocking, shushing, dimming the lights, changing positions, softening your voice, trying to help your baby settle, and then a spinning household object seems to do in 3 seconds what you could not do in 10 minutes. Parents joke about it, but there is often a sting under the joke. Why does the fan get that kind of attention? Why does a moving shadow seem to quiet them more completely than your face sometimes can? The fan is not winning. That is the first thing this moment needs corrected. A baby between 0 and 3 months is not choosing decor over love. They are not rating what matters most. They are showing you something about how early attention works. When vision is immature, arousal is unstable, and the nervous system is trying to build order inside a world that is still too big, too bright, too noisy, and too complicated to process cleanly. What looks impersonal may still be developmental. To understand why the fan becomes so magnetic, you have to step into the sensory reality of a very young infant. In the first months of life, vision is still under construction. The world is not crisp. It is not neatly layered. It is not easy to parse. Babies are still learning how to detect edges, track motion, and stay with a target long enough for that target to mean something. That makes certain kinds of visual input unusually powerful. Large shapes, strong contrast, repeated motion, and patterns that do not keep changing the rules. This is the part most parents never hear. A ceiling fan is almost perfect at being easy to read. A dark blade crossing a pale ceiling gives the eye a clean border. A moving shadow sweeping the same path again and again gives the brain a pattern that does not change its mind. Nothing sudden happens. Nothing leans in. Nothing asks for a response. The motion is slow enough to follow, regular enough to predict, and simple enough to keep using. For a system this new, that matters. Simple does not mean meaningless. In classic preferential-looking studies, researchers wanted to know whether very young infants were just passive receivers of whatever entered their visual field, or whether attention already had structure. So they showed babies different kinds of visual patterns and measured what held their gaze longer. An adult might expect early looking to be almost random. It was not. Even very young infants tended to look longer at some kinds of visual input than others, especially when the pattern was clearer, stronger, or more organized. That changed the whole interpretation of the infant's stare. A baby's gaze is not blank. Attention already has rules. They are not just looking, they are selecting. That is the first reveal the ceiling fan moment gives you. The baby is not drifting into nothing. The baby may be locking onto one of the few things in the room their visual system can process efficiently, and that matters. Because a caregiver's face, while deeply important, is also much harder work. Faces move irregularly. Eyes shift. Mouths change shape. Expressions rise and fall. Voices come with timing, emotion, and variation. Human interaction is rich. It is also dense. A face can nourish. a pattern can stabilize. That is why it is possible for two things to be true at once. Young babies are drawn to faces, and they can still become mesmerized by a ceiling fan. Those are not contradictions. They are different demands. Faces matter because they are biologically and socially important. Repetitive high-contrast motion matters because it can be easier for an immature system to hold, especially when the baby is tired, overstimulated, or hovering near the edge of fussiness. What soothes them may first be what organizes them, and then there is the stillness, which is really the part that unnerves parents. It is not just the upward stare, it is what happens to the rest of the baby while they stare. The kicking slows, the fingers uncurl, the body seems to gather itself around the act of watching. It can look like a trance, it can look like disappearance, but developmental attention research points toward a more grounded explanation. When a very young infant detects something salient and manageable, the body can reduce competing activity in order to orient. Stillness can be attention. Adults can track motion, listen to a voice, plan the next thing, and adjust posture all at once. A young infant cannot. For a baby, tracking something visually can take a much larger share of available capacity. That does not mean the baby is shutting down. It may mean the system is concentrating. The body goes quieter because the brain is busy, not in a mystical way, in a bandwidth way. A small system with limited capacity often narrows itself, so it can hold one clear stream of information. The body goes quiet so the brain can work. Researchers studying early attention wanted to know something even more specific. Why do young babies sometimes seem almost unable to stop looking? Once they lock onto something, what they found opened another layer of the story. In the first months, the systems for engaging attention mature earlier than the systems for flexibly disengaging and shifting it away. An adult might assume that if a baby keeps staring, the baby must be choosing not to look away. But early infancy does not always work like that. The baby may be able to grab onto a target before they are fully able to release it smoothly. They are not ignoring you. They are holding the lock. That helps explain why the ceiling fan stare can feel so intense. The baby is not being rude. The baby is not being strangely distant. The visual attention system may simply be doing what it currently does best, finding a clear target and staying there. And when that target is also repetitive, slow, and predictable, the effect can become even stronger. The fan is not powerful because it is special. It is powerful because it keeps being the same. Predictability is a form of relief. Think about the rest of your baby's day. Faces appear and disappear. Voices get louder and softer. Light shifts when someone crosses the room. Clothing patterns move. Hands pick them up without warning. Their own internal state keeps changing too. Hunger, gas, fatigue, temperature, the friction of moving between sleep and wake. For a nervous system this new, daily life is full of novelty. Novelty matters. But it is expensive. A spinning fan is not novel after the first few turns. It follows a rule, then it keeps following the rule. For a young brain trying to stabilize attention, that can feel like an island. What holds them may be what simplifies the world. This is where the science gets more intimate. Because under the question about the fan is usually another question no parent loves admitting. Why can that settle my baby? When I cannot? The answer is that the fan is solving a narrower problem. It is offering one clean visual stream. That is all. It cannot notice state. It cannot soften. It cannot pause. It cannot match tempo. It cannot change distance. It cannot repair overwhelm. You can. The fan can capture attention. You can shape what attention becomes. And this is where another research tradition matters. In studies of early contingent interaction, including work that became famous through the still face paradigm, Researchers wanted to know how young infants respond when human interaction suddenly becomes unreadable. A parent first engages normally, then becomes still-faced and unresponsive for a short stretch. An adult might expect a very young baby not to notice much, but babies often do notice. They strain, protest, falter, or lose regulation. When the social pattern breaks, that mattered because it showed something profound. Even early on, infants are not just drawn to stimulation. They are sensitive to whether human input is responsive and usable. Readable connection matters. That changes the ceiling fan story again. The fan may be easier to process in one narrow sensory way, but it cannot do the deeper human work. It cannot become contingent. It cannot answer the baby. It cannot help the baby move from mere attention into regulation. A repeated shadow can steady the eyes. A person can steady the whole system. That difference is enormous. You are not just there. You are part of the architecture. Once you see that, the emotional sting begins to shift. The fan is not your rival. It is a clue. It tells you something about the conditions under which your baby's attention becomes more organized. Lower complexity, stronger contrast. Slower rhythm, less social demand all at once. And once you know that, you can use the insight. You can bring your face closer, slow your own movement, soften visual clutter, reduce competing noise. Let your voice become more rhythmic. In other words, you can make yourself easier to use. You are not just calming them. You are making connection more readable on its own. A baby going very quiet under a ceiling fan does not usually mean something is wrong. Many babies are drawn to large, repetitive, high-contrast motion in the first months. Every child develops on their own timeline. But if a baby rarely seems interested in faces at close range, shows little response to voices, or seems persistently difficult to engage across many settings, that may be worth raising with a pediatric professional, not because one long stare at a fan is alarming, but because patterns matter more than isolated moments. The deeper truth here is bigger than babies like fans. A very young infant is not only learning what is interesting, they are learning what the world feels like. When it becomes manageable enough to stay with, a repeated arc, a clear edge, a predictable return. That is not trivial. That is one of the first scaffolds attention gets to build on. Before a baby can fully live inside the rich complexity of faces, voices, and relationships, the nervous system often needs something simpler to lean on first. Pattern comes before mastery. That is why the moment matters more than it looks like it should. It is not just a funny newborn quirk or a weird little family anecdote. It is a live demonstration of how a mind begins organizing reality. First, through contrast, then through repetition, then through the growing ability to hold, release, and shift attention without falling apart into noise. The fan is not teaching your baby to love objects more than people. It is revealing how early attention finds footing before social life can fully bloom. What looks impersonal may be preparing the way for connection. So the next time your baby goes still under a ceiling fan or locks onto a moving shadow across the ceiling, do not read only the eerie version of the scene. Yes, it is strange. Yes, it is memorable, but it is not empty. The silence is not vacancy. The stare is not meaninglessness. Your baby is not disappearing into a household object. Your baby may be finding, in that simple repeated motion, one of the first patterns the nervous system can truly hold without strain. And that matters because what a baby can hold, a baby can begin to organize. What a baby can organize, a baby can begin to trust. This is not a strange little obsession. This is development happening in real time. They are not just staring at the ceiling. They are learning what kind of world their mind can stay inside long enough to know